The Trofimov Beheadings. On December 15, 2012, Judge Vladimir Trofimov, 58, his wife Irina, 59, their son Sergei, 30, and his girlfriend Marina Zueva, 29, were found murdered in their home in the city of Kharkiv, Ukraine. All the bodies had been decapitated and their heads were missing. The judge, his wife, and son's partner were killed and then beheaded, while the son was beheaded while still alive. Sergei was an information technology specialist and worked from home. Police is not sure what was used, but it could have been a machete, sword, or axe. Investigators believe that maybe the murder was connected to his job because the murder took place on December 15th, which is Judges' National Day in Ukraine. Trofimov was well known for collecting rare coins, World War II medals, and China statuettes. Several antiques were reportedly missing, so robbery was another motive. The prosecutor said that the quadruple slaying had been carefully planned. He added that at least 2 people were involved in the killings. Witnesses saw the judge leave his apartment and then return between 8:30 to 10 a.m. on Saturday. The police was called at 1:02 p.m. Saturday by a 40-year-old man who had found the bodies and who was a close relative. The mystery of the Trofimov beheadings still remains unsolved to this day. YOGTZE. Also referred to as the Autobahn riddle, the YOGTZE case is one of the most cryptic unsolved cases in German history. In 1984, a man named Gunther Stoll from Anshausen in Germany suffered from bouts of paranoia. Previously a food technician, he later became unemployed. Stoll concerned his wife as he would frequently tell her he was being followed by people who wanted to kill him. He would talk about them, telling her they were coming after him, but would never specify who they were. At first, it seemed to be a classic case of paranoid schizophrenia. His wife never believed anyone was actually coming after Stoll. On the night of the 25th of October 1984, Stoll sat quietly with his wife in the living room of his home. He abruptly jumped to his feet, declaring "Jetzt geht mir ein Licht auf," which roughly translates to "Now I get it" or "Now I understand" in English. On a piece of paper, he wrote down the phrase YOGTZE, a random string of letters that are meaningless in both English and German. He left the house not long after, and his wife never saw him again. After Stoll left home, he went to his favorite pub in Wilmsdorf at around 11 o'clock at night. After ordering his first beer, he collapsed to the floor, losing consciousness and injuring his face. He wasn't drunk, and other punters said he hadn't touched his drink. After waking, he told those around him that he had suddenly gone. He left the pub as abruptly as he'd left his house. He drove to a nearby town called Hagerseelbach, where he'd grown up. At around 1 in the morning, he went to the house of an elderly woman he was acquainted with from his childhood. He told her he knew a terrible event was about to happen, saying, "Something's about to happen tonight, something pretty terrifying." Concerned, she suggested he told his parents what he was worried about. He told her he couldn't because they wouldn't understand. He would go home and tell his wife instead. He never made it home. At around 3 in the morning, 2 truck drivers discovered a crashed car off the Hagensund exit, over 100 kilometers away from Hagerseelbach. The truck drivers looked inside the car, crashed in a trench alongside the highway. They found the barely conscious Gunther Stoll, naked and severely injured. They saw another man walking away from the wreckage, but he disappeared. While waiting for police to arrive, the men spoke with Stoll, who told them 4 other men had been in the car with him, but they had run away. They asked him if the men were his friends, and he said no, they were strangers. Stoll died on the way to the hospital, unable to explain any more. The fact that Stoll was naked confused the investigation, as police could see no reason for it. They were further mystified following his autopsy, as the coroners concluded that Stoll did not die from the car accident. He had been injured elsewhere before the accident. The perpetrators must have placed him in the car and driven him to the crash site. After digging into Stoll's life, police could find no reason why he would be a target for murder. He had no criminal record, no past history with drugs. Nothing suggested anyone wanted him dead aside from the ramblings to his wife. The most likely scenario seemed to be that he stripped naked, was hit by a car, and was then placed in his own car either before or after it had crashed. None of the men he claimed to have been in the car with were ever found. Is YOGTZE the meaningless scribble of a madman, or the key to his death? The case was deemed a murder by German authorities but has never been solved. The case has been re-examined yearly ever since, but so far, all its questions remained unanswered. Perhaps Stoll was an unfortunate victim of crime who also happened to suffer from paranoid delusions. Or perhaps he somehow held the key to solving his own murder, one too cryptic for his killers to face Judgment Day. The Krasnoyarsk child killings. On April 16, 2005, 5 boys who studied at the same school, aged 9 to 12, went for a walk and then completely vanished. The boys' names were Maxim Tomanov, Safar Aliyev, Galash Mamedgasanov, Alexander Lavranov, and Dmitry Makarov. They were last seen on Glinka Street, just a couple of blocks away from their school. At first, police thought that the children had run away from home, but then they quickly changed their theory to kidnapping and then to murder. People who knew the boys did not believe the runaway theory, as only one of the boys had a somewhat unhappy family situation and had run away before. The other 4 boys were good students, had no family problems and never ran away before. Many people searched for the boys, including up to 5,000 police officers. Their bodies were finally found on the morning of May 8, more than 20 days after their disappearance. Everything about this case is bizarre. You see, they were found in a sewer in the middle of an abandoned plot of land not that far from their school or from where they were last seen, and very close to some of the boys' homes. Burned beyond recognition. Moreover, this particular sewer was searched just 3 days before by police and by Lavranov's father. On May 8, scrap metal collectors noticed that there was some strange trash on top of the manhole cover on the abandoned plot. They removed a tire and a pallet from the cover and discovered the bodies inside the sewer. And then silence. No one knew anything except that the boys were found and they were burned. The police wasn't releasing any information. At this point it started to seem that there will be no answers. And there aren't. Almost 2 decades passed and the mystery still remains unsolved. The Inokashira Park Dismemberment Incident. On April 23, 1994, a cleaning staff member of Tokyo's Inokashira Park found a garbage bag in the park's trash can. She thought the bag contained raw fish, but when her colleagues opened it to see what was inside, they found a human ankle. The police were called in, and the bag was found to contain a total of 24 pieces of human flesh, including 2 feet, 2 hands, and a shoulder. At an autopsy conducted at Kairan University Hospital, the cause of death was deemed unknown. The parts had been completely drained of blood, and to make the case even weirder, each piece was cut exactly to the length of 20 centimeters. Although a third of the body was never found, including the head, the pieces were identified 3 days later as belonging to a 35-year-old architect named Seiichi Kawamura. Kawamura lived less than a mile from the park, and was last seen on April 21st. He ate dinner with his family that evening, and afterward went out to karaoke with an old coworker. He left his friend around 11 p.m., but never returned home. His family reported him missing the next day. Despite police questioning some 37,000 people, the case has never been solved. There were reports of 2 suspicious men walking in the park and carrying a plastic bag around 4 a.m. on the day Kawamura's body was discovered, but they have never been identified. Other witnesses said that they heard the sound of a car colliding with something in the very early hours of the 22nd. It's been suggested that Kawamura was struck by a car, and that his killers cut him up to get rid of the body. One popular rumor even claimed that Kawamura had been a member of a religious cult and was brutally murdered after trying to leave it. Whether the murder was the attempt to hide a tragic accident or the work of a deranged surgeon, perhaps we'll never know. Adam. On September 21, 2001, the torso of a young boy was discovered in the River Thames, near Tower Bridge in central London. Dubbed Adam by police officers, the unidentified remains belonged to a black male, around 4 to 8 years old, who had been wearing orange girls' shorts. The post-mortem showed that Adam had been poisoned, his throat had been slit to drain the blood from his body, and his head and limbs had been expertly removed. Further forensic testing examined his stomach contents and trace minerals in his bones to establish that Adam had only been in the United Kingdom for a few days or weeks before he was murdered, and that he likely came from a region of southwestern Nigeria near Benin City known as the birthplace of voodoo. This evidence led investigators to suspect that Adam was trafficked to Britain specifically for a Myuu killing, a ritual sacrifice performed by a witch doctor that uses a child's body parts to make medicinal potions called Myuu. About 10 years later, it was reported that the torso was that of a 6-year-old named Ikpamwoza, after a television crew managed to track down a woman who used to care for him in Germany, due to his parents being deported back to Nigeria. Joyce Ojajid, a mother of 2, had told ITV's London Tonight that she handed the 6-year-old to a man reportedly named Bawa who proceeded to take the child to London. Detectives said that this was a major breakthrough. In February 2013, the BBC was contacted by Ojajid, who declared that she was prepared to tell them everything she knew about the boy. Ojajid revealed that Adam's real name was in fact Patrick Erhaber, and not Ikpamwoza. She also identified Bawa as Kingsley Ojo, and said that she had wrongly identified a photograph that had been circulating in the press as Patrick, when it was in fact of a friend's living son. However, police doubts about her mental state meant that these claims are doubted by detectives, and thus, Adam has never been formally identified. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, hit the like button, and stay tuned for more videos in the near future.